Not today, not today, not today, not tomorrow. Get out my way, please, I'm trying to get paid. Not today, not today.
Welcome into week 7 of college football. We are feeling really, really good. But before we hop into anything, remember, please like and subscribe this video. It helps us tremendously, helps us get the information that you want, help you make better bets. Steve, how are you doing? We're about halfway through the season, man. It's flying by. Tell me how you're feeling.
I cannot believe we're halfway through. Like this thing, we just started 2 weeks ago, and it's already week 7. So, but feeling great, really hitting our stride here. Loving the games, loving the actions, and loving the futures. Loving some of these futures we got going on. How about you, man? How are you feeling?
Yeah, right. I'm with you in the futures. Obviously, we're coming off of a big weekend. We'll talk a little bit about that. It's always better after a really nice winning weekend. But I can't agree more. It is literally flying by, and having the NFL and college model this year is really like making it so it just kind of feels like a nonstop roller coaster. Whether you win or lose doesn't matter on Saturday. You got to hop right back on the horse and get ready for opens and start firing away. So I guess without further ado, let us jump in to the matchup map efficiency landscape. And Steve, I got a surprise for you here, and I got a surprise for all of the viewers here. We have heard what you've been saying. Some of the voices saying, well, EPA, it is adjusted for a couple things, but it does lack some things. It leaves a little bit to be desired. So we went into the lab. We figured out, taking the statistics we use in our kind of larger game model, let's just break this up into offensive and defensive pieces, and let's figure out how to create a power rating. And you know what? That's what we got. We got the bully of the board power rating. And what this does is it takes all of the offensive data, all the offensive play-by-play data, all the defensive play-by-play data, and creates a model that predicts how many points a team will score and how many points a team will give up, right? And so this is an effective power rating for offense and defense. The cool thing about this matchup map, it's truly a matchup map. This is going to tell you basically how well a team is going to do offensively and defensively. If you take those numbers and subtract one another and you take that for any other team, you can get a spread and you can handicap pretty much any matchup you want. So tell me what you think, Steve. What jumps off on the power ratings from you? Anything you like, anything you dislike?
First of all, let's go. This is a game changer.
Let's go.
Loving this, loving this. This is just another testament to the dedication to the game. Listen, we are here for you all. We are here to provide information. Even if you don't like the model picks, you don't agree with the model picks, you want to watch some of the games because they're not sexy. A little bit of a teaser for later on today. You can really take this information and at least give yourself a fighting chance. And that's what it's all about. Giving yourself a fighting chance of more information to at least win a bet, right? So with that being said, exactly. Man, oh man, I had my doubts early on about some teams. I was a naysayer about Alabama, and they're slowly but surely creeping their way back up. Oklahoma, we talked about being sort of a darling that's being slept on, but a little bit of a teaser here coming up with this Georgia game being on one side of the coin, one side of the map, and bottom feeders like Vandy. So love this tool, man.
Yeah, and the thing you'll see about this versus like the power ratings where you can see some of our teams like Georgia, Ohio State, I mean, Michigan's popping off the page, Washington, Oregon are popping off the page, is it takes into account EPA, which is predictive, but it takes all these other statistics that we know are predictive. But one of maybe the most important is the quality of talent on that team and blue chip ratio, and adding that into the model. Those inflate the Alabamas of the world heavily. So to your point, we know on an EPA per play basis, Alabama is actually in the quadrant of good defense, bad offense, but you have a roster of 90% blue chip ratios. Hey, they're actually probably a little bit better than the average team, right? And that makes a lot of logical sense. And so we've gone live with some of these, and teams like LSU, people are saying they should be lower. And maybe on a true only one statistic basis, maybe you can make that argument. But when we're talking these highly recruited, high level rosters like LSU, it's basically impossible for them to get less than a certain number because we're comparing them to an average team. Okay. You may think LSU's defense is bad in reference to the SEC, but let me tell you, if LSU played Temple, okay, they would have a good defense. So I just want to point that out and caveat. Some of the things I want to jump into here, and let's start with maybe one of the, I don't want to say it's unsexy, but it's kind of right on the border. The ACC. Going into the season, I think you would agree it was like the questions were Clemson, or is this Florida State's year?
Yeah.
Maybe which one, I'm not sure. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's Louisville doing the damn thing, upset Duke. We called it. The model had it. But what is your take on the ACC here? Because is Louisville the favorite right now? Like, that sounds crazy to say, but I think they're the favorite right now. Are they not?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got to give credit where credit's due. They came through here, they beat another ranked team, and Louisville should be the favorite. They should be the number on top of the standings, which they are now. Technically they're tied, with Florida State, but at 3-0, but in the conference. But yeah, this is Louisville's conference to win until it's not. Meaning that, yes, I think right now you got to give Louisville all the credit in the world, but I'd be very, very wary of a North Carolina team. Another really sexy team no one's really talking about. This to me, you could tell me Louisville, FSU, North Carolina, Duke who's undefeated, Clemson, maybe they can go on a hot run and people beat each other up. A little less likely with 2 losses already. But if you told me one of four or five teams, hell, Georgia Tech 2-1. If you told me one of those 4 or 5 teams, I'd say, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy at all. I think, though, Georgia Tech kind of, good teams win, great teams covered against Louisville and covered against Miami. I think we got to talk about that Miami game. What a blunder there, because only 1 week ago, we're also putting Miami in that scenario of these good ACC teams. And I was even calling for them to potentially upset Florida State. Now, I'm not going to get off that take because I think this team is good. But that loss for no reason literally is going to kind of derail in my opinion, their ACC championship kind of dreams, because that loss just messes everything up. And if they stumble one more time, it's for sure out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're saying Clemson is pretty much dead in the water with 2 losses, Miami has to be damn near perfect, or really perfect. No, damn near. They have to be perfect the rest of the way through to have a shot. And to blow a game like that against an unranked opponent going into a ranked game against UNC this week, how do you? I'll be curious to see how do you mentally recover from that. If you're the players and that first thing starts to go wrong, the game gets a little tight. Every play matters. There's so much stress on this. You can't have that happen.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I think Cristobal came out and said it was him and it was his issue. There's also some rumors that the running back had 99 yards. He was trying to get his guy 100 yards. I don't know. I've also seen some pictures where the runner looks pretty clearly down. So I don't. Very interesting there. But obviously in that scenario, there you go. Maybe you got to learn this lesson every 15 to 20 years, where you go, I wish they would just run it. I wish they would just do whatever. I wish they would, and the team's about to cover and they kneel it. This is why, because there actually is some risk that happens sometimes. All right, heading out of the ACC, let's go down south, SEC country. This is a really interesting week in the SEC, because Georgia flipped the switch like we thought maybe they could do or would do at some point. Alabama, I don't want to say flip the switch, but they did beat A&M at A&M, and I got to start giving credit where credit is due, because that isn't easy, right? And now Milrose beat A&M twice, and I think they broke a record there for that game. So give me some thoughts of the big dogs, Georgia and Alabama, Steve.
Yeah, I think the big dogs, you said it correctly, the dogs, right? I mean, Georgia, this is still their conference to lose. Alabama is definitely doing what we thought they would do going into this year. Nick Saban's going to save it, right? You've seen these impressive wins. I bet against them going into Mississippi. I got burned. I bet against them going into Mississippi State. I got burned. And then I didn't put any money down, but I was like, oh, A&M for sure is going to, upset them there. I got burned again. So at some point, you gotta start believing this is the team that we thought they were going to be. Maybe not how we thought they were going to do it, with a potent offense, throwing the ball over the field, running, run game, defense. That's a kind of skill this year, but they look to be on the right track. Now, Georgia has not really blundered this year. That's why I think it's their conference to lose. And you can see here on the matchup map, they're separating from the rest of the pack for a reason, and I think that's going to stay the same until the end of the season.
Yeah, so let's kind of zoom in a little bit there on the SEC West, because preseason it was, is LSU going to win a national championship? Now there was a lot of hype. I think the public was really high on Mizzou, and I think for the public bettors out there, or anybody that was on Mizzou, if you want to start thinking like a pro, you really have to believe you're on the right side of that bet. And I know you didn't win, but I think Mizzou was the right side. And I think that ended up opening at +8. So some people I think may have pushed or covered. I don't remember. I think it ended up, I forget how LSU on that pick six kind of messed everything up. But any thoughts here for LSU? This is maybe the most enigma team that I want to hate, but like I don't, reel me in is not the word, but like they haven't just got that final nail in the coffin just yet, even though I want it to be there so bad.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I'm just kind of peeking ahead to the schedule. And, consider your point earlier. Yeah, LSU against a bad, or against a good SEC team, they should be lower down. But against the Temples of the world, they really should shine. And you look at the rest of the schedule here, Auburn, Army, Georgia State, A&M, those should be pretty easy games. And so now you're left with, can Florida and big bad Alabama, be the one to put that nail in the coffin? And from what I've seen so far, yeah, I think either of them can do that, especially Alabama. I mean, you beat up on the Grambling States of the world. Sure, that makes you feel good. Your dick feels big. But when you're going back into SEC tournament, actual competition, I've lost faith, man. I've lost faith.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing I think that's most disturbing here is this is a team that returned like something like 80 or 90% of their offensive production. I think most of their issues are on the defensive side, but this is not a team this is not, think about 2 years ago where Georgia returned a lot of offensive production. We're not seeing anything near that at all. So I don't know. The SEC, I couldn't agree more. This is Georgia's to win or Georgia's to lose. And I don't think they will lose it, to be honest. I think whoever comes out of the West is going to get stomped by Georgia, and Georgia kind of just easily goes to the playoff. And quite frankly, if they can play like they did against Kentucky, they're going to be competitive, no doubt about it. All right, going into the Midwest, Ohio State, man, they are the other team that flipped the switch. We can't also forget Michigan, because that switch has been engaged. They're not messing around. What is going on at the top there? And then the other third, team trying to play, catch up here and trying to get into that top tier, Penn State. I believe they were on a bye last week, but obviously they're going to play Ohio State. They're going to play Michigan in the coming weeks. What are you kind of making up at the top of the Big Ten?
Yeah, I know we entered this year, I think like everyone else, saying this is going to be between Michigan and Ohio State, going to come down to the last game of the season, determine who that conference winner was going to be, and then, playing for the Big Ten championship. I feel terrible for Penn State fans, because Penn State looks phenomenal, and it sucks that they're in the East. If Penn State was in the West, or Ohio State, Michigan, one of those teams were in another conference, this would be a great thing, because I think either one of those teams, Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State, they're going to dominate a Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota. There really is no competition. This is so top heavy in one part of the division. It almost seems unfair that, two of these teams are not going to be in the running for the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, and this is like a real life meme, in my opinion, where the death guy is going down each hallway knocking on the door. Michigan is just slaughtering Big Ten teams one by one. Or the Grim Reaper is going down the hallway, and I mean, beat up Nebraska, beat up Minnesota. I mean, and it was interesting that that Ohio State game. I don't exactly know what happened. I watched it kind of out of the peripheral, but it was interesting. That was definitely a flip switch. They basically covered that whole spread in the second half. And shout out Ryan Day for making it a point to cover that spread. I really dig in these coaches' decision makings to kind of really make it a point, like, okay, good teams win, great teams cover, we're covering. And the Terps were a red hot team. This was a team that was one of the best teams in the country offensively and defensively. And I'm not saying they aren't, but that makes that Ohio State win even more impressive. And, as we've seen, Ohio State's kind of started slow, started a little bit hotter each week. And then now are we kind of seeing them in form here? It'll be really interesting to see this week as Michigan goes and plays Purdue, I believe, which is definitely another potential Ohio State plays
State.
Purdue. Who does Michigan
Yeah.
play? Indiana, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, both of these teams are, bottom feeder teams. Can they both, do work? And I think the litmus test here is cover. And we'll see there. But anything left in the Big Ten, I can't agree. I can't agree more with that take. Like, Penn State just kind of gets screwed because a successful season, in my opinion, is either beating Ohio State or Michigan. It's not both.
Right. Yeah. No, 100% agree with that. Yeah. And I'm just really excited to see who are these teams going to actually be. Ohio State, they have that, obviously the big win over Notre Dame. Should they have won that game remains up to debate, but at the end of the day, they did win. So
they won.
Exactly. So I want to see what these teams are going to be once they get deep into this conference play, when they start kind of beating up with each other. But yeah, I really think until proven otherwise, Michigan is the team to beat, but Ohio State looks the most impressive because of who they played so far. And to your point, Ohio State didn't just cover in the second half. They covered in the fourth quarter, right? Because that game was tied. I remember we were watching this on the live, right? They were tied at 17 and then scored 17 unanswered in the fourth quarter. So that always makes you wonder, man, how dangerous is this team really? Because, we always talk about their receiving core and how, well equipped they're supposed to be on the offensive end, and they shows you that. And if they can do that at the flip of a switch, watch out.
Yeah. And I think one before we move on, one team that's I don't tell me if this is unfair, but like, is Wisconsin like really, really underperforming? Like, this is a team 9.5 wins was their win total. And we were like on the fence because there was actually some interesting pathways for them to even win the Big Ten. Fickle, they went and grabbed UNC's offensive coordinator. They actually returned quite a lot of that roster. Like, this team is like, meh, is the best I could do. They beat up on Rutgers. Like, is that the team they're going to be? They'll fight against the scraps, I guess. But that team in my mind is probably the most, I had the most hype on them, and that hype did not pan out in my opinion.
No, 100%. We talk about the Luke Fickell, Phil Longo combination. This is supposed to be this air raid based offense. You got Mordecai coming in to sling the ball up and down the field, and we just have not seen that, not at all. And it's not like they're playing these top tier defenses week in and week out. Now obviously you go up against the Iowas this week. That's a top tier defense, but when you're talking about the Georgia Southerns, the Purdue's, maybe Washington State, I'll give them a little bit of pass there, but it really is a disappointment because, to your point, even if you get back to the championship, or even to go through the season and they're working their way up to the championship game or the conference title, you're running into one of these juggernauts. I have not seen anything that gives me any faith that Wisconsin can hang with any of the big three.
Yeah. Not even close.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you talked a little bit about it in an air raid offense, and I think that's going to take us then into the Pac-12 because, man, these offenses are slinging the ball. Conference of Champions, man. RIP. This sucks that this is the last year. Man, could you imagine if you could just watch all of these games? Like, you could watch every single one of these on a normal TV channel, and you don't have to like go and commit fraud to see any of these teams play. We're going to talk about the Washington Oregon matchup, but give me some of your thoughts here because I don't remember the Pac-12 being this competitive and maybe ever.
Yeah, I was just thinking that before we started recording, right? We've had a couple of years where, you got the SC and Oregons in the top 25, or, maybe a Utah and a Washington team here or there. But this team or this conference seems stacked with potential, right? And I don't know if it's like I don't know if I should feel good because it's the ultimate farewell, or if I should feel jaded because we could have had this going forward. Like, this could have been the beginning of something amazing, and that's being taken away from us. But yeah, man, I mean, you look at all these things. We'll talk about some of these matchups coming up soon here, but offense seems to be the predominant theme here, right? Like you mentioned, the air raid offense, this West Coast offense, these teams cannot be grounded. They cannot be stopped. I mean, look at Washington. They're in a league of their own offensively and predicted points per game. Like, that's insane. And not to mention SC and Oregon are the ones actually lighting up the scoreboard every week that everyone's actually talking about. So I'm excited, man.
Yeah, and we've been talking about it. SC here, we go back to just the EPA per play. Finally, we have the EPA per play that we've been kind of calling out for SC as they've kind of been trickling down week by week by week as they've played more and more efficient offenses. Spoiler alert, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the SC Notre Dame matchup. But yeah, I can't say how happy I am that we have a Washington or Oregon to win Pac-12 because I don't think this is crazy. I don't think SC is going to make the Pac-12 tournament. I think they're going to stumble to Oregon and Washington. Yeah. I think Oregon, Washington only lose once, and I think it's Oregon, Washington in the Pac-12 championship game, and we don't even see SC. I really do believe that, and this defense just can't stop anybody. Shout out to Arizona, bear down here. I mean, they damn near almost lost to Arizona
with a backup quarterback.
Yeah, no, I know.
I mean, you said. I mean, you said it perfectly. I mean that is not a hot take. You heard it here first. We're gonna clip this up, put it on billboards. SC is a team that I would sell high for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Fight on, except on defense, I guess is the slogan there. And then Colorado. No disrespect them, but I think we're starting to see like the same expectation should be put on Colorado that is in Nebraska, or maybe we just got done talking about it in Wisconsin. Like, these coaches taking over really good programs and taking leaps forward. You can't just go from one of the worst teams, or in the case of Colorado, the worst team, to a national championship contender. But that does not mean what they're doing is not impressive. And it doesn't mean that they're not actually making big strides. It just makes what Alabama and Georgia do so much more impressive, because the year in and year out ability of that is very difficult to do. And I think in the long term, we've talked about this before, teams like Colorado, and I think I put Nebraska in there as well. I think these teams will be really competitive in the years to come with these better coaching staffs. But to just flip the switch in one season, even with NIL, even with transfer portal, there's still our model is picking up on it. We're not having to, buy the hype. I think we officially bet on them twice via the model and won both times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And against them, right? So yeah.
Betting against it, like picking up, like, this team has a lot of hype, but like, no, they're getting way too much. They're getting way too much value at open, and most of that value is getting eaten up by close. But okay, well, we just have one left, and I don't know. I saved it for last because this was maybe, in my opinion, the best game of the week. We have the Big 12. Texas ends up losing to Oklahoma. That was a damn good game. That was nothing short of a shootout. And man, Oklahoma comes out on top. I followed my own, advice here. I did get a futures for Oklahoma to win the national championship before the game. So I've already gotten a little bit of value after that Texas loss. But, let's talk about the Big 12, because obviously Texas still, in my opinion, has the best win. I think going into Tuscaloosa, it was not a blowout win, but it was a dominating win. I think it's still, in my opinion, the best win. Oklahoma now beating Texas in that fashion, in that game, I think is probably the second. And then now I'll put Notre Dame and Ohio State as the third. But, talk to me about that Big 10. We obviously like Kansas, but it looks like Kansas and basically everybody else in the Big 12 is in a league behind Oklahoma and Texas here.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see this shake out, just kind of thinking about where this, what's going to look like at the end of the year. You have your Oklahoma sitting at the top, and then Texas, and we talk about the Kansas, right? But, West Virginia's 2-0. Do we really believe they're going to be a contender? No. Iowa State's 2-1. Do we think they're going to be a contender? No, right? And so as you got to work your way down this list, we talked about the darlings. TCU came in this thing completely overrated, and they, from the jump, have shown that this is going to be a regression year for them. And I just don't see anyone on this roster that I'm afraid of besides Texas and Oklahoma. And if Kansas can get some things to go their way, they're going to be in the mix, because we know that offense is going to be pretty potent. But yeah, man, I think this is going to shake up to be a hell of a finish. And if Oklahoma can finish strong, they're in the driver's seat, right? They're in the driver's seat, and it's theirs to win.
And remind me, for Big 12, they have a Big 12 championship, correct? So if OU wins out and Texas wins out, will we just get an OU Texas Big 12 championship?
Oh God, I hope so. Here, let's see. So with Big 12,
because some of these conferences do winning percentage, some of the conferences do division. So this is really interesting. And to your point about Kansas, while you look that up, like, yeah, I mean, the one thing shake their way, can we just get their starting quarterback to play? I mean, that is the one thing that I don't want to say is holding this team back, but they're doing big things without that. And I that's obviously very impressive, but what is this offense with their starting quarterback? I mean, that I don't know that they beat Texas. I'm not going crazy here, but can they score enough that, they're the, third best team in the Big 12? That to me is the big question.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, no, you're right. I think this is one of the conferences where it's just going to come down to winning percentage. So right now, West Virginia has the edge because they're 2-1. But if Texas wins out, right, if they can outpace a Kansas, T-Tech, and Iowa State team, they're gonna be sitting pretty here.
Yeah, and I remember I looked at the OU schedule a couple days ago. Like this is a pretty easy schedule. Obviously it's just college, and there's some bumps in the road that can always happen, but they do not have to play anybody that is going to be in the top 25. So we'll see. So I stand by that. I guess round 2, whoever wins that game will go to the playoff. I guess technically, yeah, I think so. Well, Oklahoma's undefeated right now, right?
Correct.
So if Oklahoma beats Texas, they'll be undefeated in theory, and they'll for sure go to the playoff. If Texas beats Oklahoma, they'll only have the one loss to Oklahoma. They'll go. So I think it's Texas out. It's Texas Oklahoma coming out of the Big 12 here. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
maybe I can hope and pray that maybe Kansas figures its way out in there, but I think it's probably one of those two teams.
Yeah, and to your point, there are no other ranked teams unless something dramatically changes for Texas either. So I mean, it seems like all roads point to OU Texas Red River rivalry rematch.
Yeah, round 2 remix. All right. Well, that's the recap using the power ratings and the true matchup map, because you can actually use these two teams to compare on a spread scale and help your handicapping. So let us know how it works this week. Let us know in the comments to help you win. I know I've been hearing a lot of people saying they use the EPA landscape and it's been helping them win. So this is even an upgrade to that, because this has EPA information in it, as well as all the other offensive and defensive predictive statistics. So hope it helps. Hope it adds some value to y'all and you can win some money. All right, Steve, let's recap week 6. Ooh. Holy moly. I can't even hold back. Holy shit. Okay, we went 9-0. Man, this thing, and I wish I could say it was a sweat. Look, you're gonna, if you ever want to hear me talk about the reality of variance and all these things, this 100% is positive variance, right? And you should never expect to go 9-0, and you don't necessarily need to see regression in 1 week the next week, but over a large sample size, no, we will not go 9-0 every week. So check that at the door. But when it does happen, I can tell you from firsthand, positive variance is way better than negative variance. Tell me your thoughts this weekend, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, you're in Philly, so to quote one of the Philly greats, Meek Mill, I used to pray for times like this. This is just, I mean, this was amazing. I think the closest sweat we had was that Thursday night game in Jacksonville State when they were down and they came back and absolutely covered and won, right? So
yeah, same thing happened in Connecticut Rice. I don't expect anybody to watch that game. I had to go deep in my ESPN subscriptions to watch this game. They were down 10-0, and I'm like, oh man, okay, well we had +10, but man, Rice looked good. And then I turned away and I turned back maybe 5 minutes later. It was 14-10 Connecticut, and they never looked back and they dominated. I mean, it was crazy. It was wild. And then we had 8 dogs and then Michigan just dominated. I mean, literally, I think the first play of the game was a pick 6 for Michigan against Minnesota.
And you never look back, and this is, I want to go back to something we said a couple of weeks ago where we had a slate of games of, really tier 3 ESPN plus games, right? Where you got to go dig deep into the files. This is the beauty of having the model, right? Because there's no way in hell I would go through and handicap on my own a Jacksonville State game, a Utah State, Colorado State game. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm not watching it. So this is able to find value for you in places you would never look, and quite frankly, places I don't think the market's really looking as a whole, right? And not as closely as your top tier, big tier game. So, I think this is just a prime example of the benefits of it. Yes, we're not going to go undefeated every week, but boy, it feels good to do it.
Yeah, it really does. And then to your point, Steve, like also though, right? The using the model to look at every game using all of the statistics also gives you a chance to go sometimes find the favorite, right? We bet on a favorite, and probably a public favorite. I imagine Michigan was probably a public favorite. So, you'll hear a lot of things out in the marketplace, always, fade the public, do all these things. Guys, the reality of what professionals are doing is they are figuring out a way to quantify or originate a number. Now, some of the best guys in the world, they have relationships with multiple groups that they originate the number and they pay them for that information. They don't actually do it themselves. Other syndicates like us, we try to build and get the number ourselves, so we know what market we're betting into and how to quantify our edge. But point being, these kind of easy layup rules, always do this, always fade the public, they're catch-alls that aren't really translatable. And I think this is probably one of the best examples I could say. Like, yeah, we took a lot of dogs, and then the favorite we liked, it was a slam dunk, right? So, I think those are the things that I would take away from this week. And I want to reiterate it, right? Positive variance. This is positive variance. If you're new here, you see 9-0, I'll be the first one to tell you, we will not go 9-0 again. And, we don't want to sell you a bill of goods. We quantify our edge. We take those edges. And, sometimes we see positive variance. Sometimes we see negative variance. But in the aggregate, in the large sample size, we expect to be on the right side of the positive variance, right? We expect to have a plus EV amount at the end of the season. So this was crazy. I also love that it had Oklahoma, because that was so cool to not only have the model, but then that was like one of the best games of the weekend. So being able to have a side and have the model was a really, really cool thing, in my opinion. And we were able to get that at 6.5, like patience that, right? I mean, that opened at 6, or kind of was bubbling, got 6.5. We were able to snipe it. And then I think it ended up closing at 4.5. So, I mean, we were able to see quite a lot of CLV. All right. Well, that was the week 6 results. Heading in to week 7, we have 4 matchups we want to talk about. We're going to talk about the first Pac-12 kind of showdown. This, in my opinion, is going to be the best game of the week. You have Washington versus Oregon. This game is in Washington. The market is currently sitting at -3 for Washington. It opened at -2. You can see there's really not a whole lot of value which way. This number kind of opened up right on market, or right on the number, in our opinion. But I can't tell you how excited I am to watch it. Steve, break down to me here one team, or the team that you kind of think is going to pull away here, even though we're talking, of spread of -3. We're kind of calling this a very, very evenly matched thing. We saw the matchup map earlier. We saw that Washington is one of the best offenses, but walk me through your kind of opinions on this team, on these teams in this game.
Yeah, I look at this game, and the first thing I think of is thank God for the transfer portal, because this is a matchup straight out of heaven, right? Bo Nix coming in, you got Michael Penix Jr. on the other side, just absolutely slanging the ball. This is going to be a fun game to watch, no matter who you're betting on, no matter what your side's going to be. With that being said, we talk about the offensive success rate. Not only are these two teams really good at it, they're 1 and 2 in the country. Right, like these are 2 of the best teams in terms of offensive success rate that are in college football right now. And so, as weird as it may sound, to me, this is a game that's going to come down to defense, because both these teams are going to put up points. It's which defense can somewhat slow the other one down. And I have to give the nod to Oregon. You can see there, that's where on a defensive EPA per play, Oregon edges out Washington, as well as the defensive success rate. You can see Oregon there at 37.24 versus Washington at 40.5, right? And so, I think this is going to be 2 talented teams, 2 talented heavyweights going toe-to-toe, and Oregon comes out with a couple of stands that makes all the difference in the world. I can easily see a 3 or 7 point game, one cover spread going down to the wire.
Yeah.
Now, am I off base though? What do you think?
No, I don't think you're off base. I agree. This is going to be a 1 possession game. I don't disagree with any of your analysis. The thing I would also even add to the Oregon bet would be blue chip ratio. We know that talent matters, right? And I don't want to say that Washington doesn't have a high blue chip ratio, but comparatively, they got a lot more guys or dogs, if you will, on Oregon side. I wonder if that comes into play, and whether you're saying that comes out on the defensive side, the offensive side. But quite frankly, these things trickle down to special teams, right? If you have 5-star recruits that don't get playing time, and their only playing time is block, punt team and all in kickoff return, right? You have better athletes there. That's where a play can get made. So I would key in on that. I want so bad here to bet Oregon, but I want to ask this question of myself and to you. Is Oregon the go-to bet because we've seen them play this season? I have to say, I have been tracking Washington statistically. We've been running the model. We see them every week. They jump off the page. If you run the power ratings and you look at who's the actual number 1 ranked team in the nation, Washington. Okay, Oregon is a couple down. They're there too. I'm not saying they're not good, but is this a psychological little trick we're playing on ourselves because we're just familiar with Oregon? We've seen them and we go, oh, yeah, okay, this is a good team. You're on the West Coast, so maybe you actually have, and I don't have a billion channels to see the Pac-12 network, so I can't watch any Washington games, but I haven't actually seen them play this season.
Yeah, no, that's fair. There's definitely a familiarity there, right? And not just with this season, but I think Oregon's more of a household powerhouse name, right? Washington's definitely had their good years, don't get me wrong, but Oregon seems to annually be up at least in the conversation. So I think there's definitely a familiarity factor there. I've only seen one game of Washington. That's when they beat up on Arizona, but that was a close game. Arizona was within a touchdown at the final score. So I don't disagree with you. I mean, this is going to be a close game one way or the other. And you can absolutely make a convincing argument, and you just did, of why Washington could backdoor, if not win this thing outright.
Yeah, and I just keep coming back to that because, I mean, I haven't really seen that many Oregon games either. We saw, obviously, the public Oregon versus Colorado, but this is an Oregon team that barely made it out of Texas Tech alive, right? And Texas Tech ain't jumping off the page at all. And so I want to fight the urge there because it does. It feels a little even psychological to me. And I think you're right. Like, being a Pac-12 guy, I'm like conditioned like, oh yeah, Oregon's good. Because in my college experience, Oregon was always a good team. And so it's like, oh yeah, like it's just easy to think Oregon's a good team. If you regress to the market, you get -2. If you look at the raw output of the model, it puts this game right at -3 Washington. I think the market is just exactly right on. I want to fight the urge to want to have action on the game, but I think if I decide like, okay, I just want to have action on this game, I want to make it worth, I think I'm going to fight my dumb brain, and I think I'm going to lay the points to Washington. We're talking about an offense that has been unstoppable, and to your point, you're saying there was a close game with Arizona. Well, we believe Arizona is a good team, and we saw what they could do to a really efficient SC defense. Now, so to me, that's 2 data points that Arizona is the real deal. And they were actually able to pull away from Arizona more so than SC. So I don't know. I kind of want to, I don't know. This is honestly a fade myself bet.
Okay, so
like
let me ask this.
The stats are in the direction of Washington, but my brain wants to be like, oh no, that's not like, no, it's 3 points. Just, it's Oregon. Like, come on.
All right, so we always talk about quantifying our edges here, and this is something that you're on the fence here. So if you're talking about laying the points here at 2 and 2.5, I hear you. But if Washington creeps up to 3.5, it's at
3. It's at 3 across the board. There are threes. Only threes in the market. I mean, I'll slam this broken record because I called my shot and I didn't make the internet hear me. I said this against Ohio State, Notre Dame. If you can get Oregon plus 3.5 and you can get Washington minus 2.5, do it. I think it's going to be that good of a game. But there is a part of me that thinks Washington's offense is the real deal. And we haven't really seen Oregon go up against the best offense in the nation, right? And that could be the difference. But I still do come down to that blue chip ratio. As we've kind of built the model, as we've looked at this more and more, and we talked about it last week with Kentucky, these rosters that have really, really lopsided talent, those are the teams that can flip the switch and you go, oh, whoa, how did they win by 40? I mean, I'm not saying they're going to, against Washington, but I'm just saying, like, when you just have so many more people that have talent, it trickles down to all of the plays, even the, even special teams and these things that we kind of take for granted. So I don't know. For me, officially at this point, I don't know what I'm going to bet, even if I'm going to bet it at all. I really don't like betting negative EV. It's hard for me to convince myself I have an edge when I literally spend thousands of hours quantifying it, and then it tells me I don't. It's very hard to ignore that. What about you? You got a pick in this game?
No, I mean, this is going to be too close for me to call. I mean, this is a coin flip of all coin flips. If this were like a pick 'em, I think I'd feel better just emotionally about it. But this one to me is going to be so back and forth. I really can't pick a side. I wanted to flirt with the and I haven't looked at the over lines or the total lines, but I wanted to flirt with a shootout happening here. But I think I just have to stay away.
Yeah, this is interesting. Maybe this is another one where betting the overtime could be a good bet. But no matter what happens, I think this is going to be a really, really good game. All right.
Yeah.
Staying in the Pac-12 for some of this, we got SC Notre Dame. This game is in Notre Dame. I don't know if you've seen any of the social media videos, Steve, where they're spraying the kickoff return guys with like water to simulate the weather in Notre Dame because it's apparently going to be rainy. I thought that was pretty funny. This is an interesting game. SC barely made it out alive against Arizona. Notre Dame obviously went and fell to Louisville after 3 crazy games back to back to back. They went and played a night game in Notre Dame against Ohio State, then played at Duke, ended up pulling that win out, and then ended up succumbing to Louisville. So a lot of pressure for those guys. And then, they lose, but then here they go again. Don't tell me this game is not important. I mean, this is probably the most important game left on their schedule. And I mean, the model puts this number at 1. The market is currently sitting at SC minus 3.5. So it's moved a little bit. Notre Dame minus 3.5. So it's moved in the direction of Notre Dame here. But this is effectively a pick 'em. I definitely don't have the same opinion about the 3.5, 2.5 here. I think no matter what ends up happening, one of these teams is just going to be gassed. And I'm not sure if it's going to be Notre Dame or if it's going to be USC, but both of these teams have just gone through it. And I think this is where it kind of falls apart for one of them. What's your thoughts?
Yeah. Listen, this is not a model pick, but SC is in trouble. They're in trouble. You look at this through and through, everything you just said about SC going through with their opponents and their porous defense. You have actually go back to the matchup map real quick.
Yeah.
Right. So
you
we
want
talk
this
about
one, or you want this one or this one?
Actually, you can go back to the EPA per play. That's fine. Yeah. And it really doesn't matter. Also, we can use both. We can do both, right? Because the results are the same, right? You look at an ASU team who's bad offense. You look at a Colorado team who's coming through and they are, really towards just above average offense going in there. And then you have Arizona, right? Who is in the league of good offense. But then you see SC at the far right. They've always been in a completely different league offensively. But what's been their Achilles heel all year long has been the defense. The defense has been their Achilles heel all year long. And we talked about this earlier. They've been trickling further and further down, or further and further worse on their defensive EPA per play. And Notre Dame is better than any team SC has faced. So if SC can barely squeak out against a Colorado team, if SC can barely survive a U of A team with a backup quarterback in triple overtime, what are they going to do against Notre Dame? Now, I will give you, obviously, Notre Dame lost to Louisville. That was a bad loss. But Notre Dame's playing 4 straight ranked teams. They are battle tested.
Yeah.
SC hasn't played anybody. Their best win is Colorado. And so I look at this and I see an SC team that is coasted by on the beauty of their offense, the skill of Caleb Williams not really having to try, and they're going to run into a brick wall that is Notre Dame. I see this being absolutely more than a 1-score affair. To your point, I think one of these teams does get gassed, and it's going to be SC.
Yeah, I would say the Arizona win is maybe their biggest win, but maybe I'm a little bit biased.
That's fair.
I agree with your analysis. We've been kind of saying it week after week. We're not going to be surprised, and we keep calling our shot that SC is going to keep going lower and lower and lower on an EPA per play on defense. And what have they done every week that they've played a good offense or a better offense? And that's just proven over and over and over. And to your point, Notre Dame, yes, lost to Louisville, but what does Louisville actually have? A good defense. So you're right here. I almost put this. The SC's defense could be as bad as Navy week 1 or week 0. That was week 0. The only reason, to your point, I'm not rushing to the counter here to just slam on the angle of just SC's finally going to play a team that just is better on every side of the ball, has better talent, just literally it's just a better team, is that gauntlet you talked about. That is a lot. That's a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State, then Duke, then you lose to Louisville. Does that and it's really hard for me to conceptualize if that's actually motivating or deflating, because that loss effectively kicks you out of the college football playoff. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I could see like, okay, we lost, like the game, the season's over, and then you end up losing to SC. But I'm with you here. Notre Dame seems like the play. Now, again, there's no real value, but the market is disagreeing. The market is buying up Notre Dame, saying there's value there, and it's moved through the 3. So that's not, in my opinion, not a benign move. I think that the market is suspect on SC and probably on their defense, and I know we are. I don't know if officially I'll play this game, but I like everything you said. I think SC does probably run into a brick wall. I think this is a game where it doesn't end in a 1 possession game. I think if Notre Dame does win, they probably win by 14 or more.
Yeah.
I guess there's some backdoor opportunities just because Caleb Williams can throw, a touchdown with 50 seconds left. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so you official pick here. You're running with Notre Dame.
Yeah. Okay. And I will say, to your point too, there is definitely a risk here, right? Notre Dame can be absolutely gassed. And I think that's what we saw in the second half of Louisville. But I think this is, as you already said, this is their season. Notre Dame doesn't have another chance for a signature win, whereas USC has a ton of Pac-12 opportunities to pick up and kind of pick up from a blunt. Now, I'm not saying SC's going to come in here deflated thinking, oh, well, we can just win later. No, I'm not saying that at all. This is a a game they get up for. This is a rivalry game. This is a game they're going to get up for. But Notre Dame, I think, is a better team and the more desperate team. That spells trouble for me against a team that I think they've just coasted on, hey, yeah, the defense is not great, but we've got Caleb Williams. We'll score 40, 50 points and we'll be all right. And it's worked so far. I just don't see it working against Notre Dame.
Yeah, and then Kevin's talked a lot about the parity here. Is there enough parity and enough loss at the top that we actually see a couple of two-loss teams be able to get in? So this is, this game ends up actually being really important. And I'm sure from a coaching angle, you're going to play that, right? Like the season's not over. The only thing we can control is the games in front of us and all the coach talk. And so I don't mind your angle here. I especially at the 3.5, it's hard to lay it, especially when I guess the angle here really is just that we're forecasting that SC's defense just gets worse. Now, can we actually measure that? No, but just off the trend, we don't have a lot of reason to believe that they would get better. We've seen nothing but them get worse when they go against good offenses. This is going to be one of the best offenses. Oh yeah, and by the way, this is probably one of the worst defenses Notre Dame has faced. And so can they have a lot of success? Because we've seen them have a lot of success against bad defenses. So yeah. I think it's not a bad play at all. I would consider playing it myself. All right. Going into the ACC now, we have NC versus Miami. This game is going to be played at UNC. The number is currently sitting at 3.5. This obviously opened it to a little bit of value there on UNC. I dig that. I dig it. I'm going to kind of just jump in here first. I have to believe college kids here are the most deflated after what happened in Miami. And we talked a little bit about this at the beginning. I don't see how you bounce back, because what's the coaching mumbo jumbo? I messed up, my bad. Like, let's get back to work. Like, it's such a deflating thing where you have all this hype. You're such an improved team. All these things are happening. You're working your ass off. That team was down against Georgia Tech. They fought back. They were going to win the game. And then your coach just makes this blunder. How does it not make you go, what? I'm good. I'm good here. And USC is a good team. So that's kind of my angle here. And then the fact that there's a little bit of edge and UNC's side, I think for me is something I'm comfortable with. But let me know your thoughts, Steve.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely don't want to overreact to one play, right? But at the same
Yeah,
time,
fair.
that's a big play. Like that is a
Yeah.
season altering play, and I don't know how you just bounce back from that. Now, with that being said, these are still two really good teams, but I do think UNC has the edge here. I think Drake May is one of those people that we really aren't talking about, but he's
Yeah.
low key lighting it up for UNC. I mean, he's throwing the ball all over the field with a high success rate. So this is, to me, I think you're able to kick a team when they're down. And for this being so close as it is, even though it's not, our 2% preferred value at there, I think the UNC spread, UNC is definitely a team to go. The model's leaning there. I'm leaning there too.
Yeah. And as you say that, and as I kind of think about what I just said, and I come back to the thing that is a counterpoint to what I was, I've been saying, right? But look at the blue chip ratio. Where do we actually see the talent?
Sure.
And it's on the Miami side. Is this an
Mhm.
opportunity to buy low? Because it ain't lower. This is as low, as we've seen Miami this season. Now, the previous statement I just said about what I worry is that it gets lower only because of an emotional thing. And how do they actually bounce back? Because it just seems so demoralizing. Like it's the classic coach talk is like always like, what are you in control of? Well, this if you're a player, this is something you were not in control of. Like maybe I guess the player that
Mhm.
fumbled it, but he was put in a pretty bad situation in the first place. So that's what I fear is just like this starts to crumble, because this is a Miami team that last year really, really, really went through it, and they were struggling. And by the way, they were favored against UNC. And what did UNC do? They won this game as dogs. So history maybe not repeating itself from the dog standpoint, but UNC beating a Miami team. It seems like it's probably the play, and the market's agreeing. The market's bought this up to 3.5. Yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be a good game. Another top 25 matchup. Really, really
Yeah.
curious to see if Miami can bounce back, because with one loss, they can definitely be in it. But with two losses, that's kind of everything. And UNC hasn't lost yet, right? So they're definitely fighting for the ACC.
Yeah.
All right. Bringing up to the last matchup of the top 25s. We're talking about UCLA at Oregon State. This is now it's opened at, what did it open at? 5, is now bought
Right.
down to 3.5. You can get UCLA plus 3.5
Ooh.
or Oregon State 3.5. You've kind of identified this way before me, and I still, to be honest, I'm not on the boat. I'm a hater. I am ignorant. I will take any word you got. I just don't believe Ohio State. Uyunglele like scarred me for life from all the games I watched. I'm not buying it. Now, I understand that I'm wrong here, but like I just feel like at any moment this team is going to implode. What am I missing?
Whoa. Ooh, implode. Okay. Oh man, yeah. Listen, I hear you on that. I definitely, it was hard to trust, a DJU led team after the debacle we saw in Clemson, but Oregon State just seems to be past that. I mean, they are just chomping their way through the competition. I think that Utah matchup was definitely a great eye opener, at least for me, on how good this team can really be when things are rolling their way. Now, with that being said, to me, this is one of those things where it's kind of that what unstoppable force versus the immovable object, where I am
Yeah.
a believer in Oregon State's offense, throwing the ball, running the ball, all phases. But I'm looking at this matchup and I'm looking at this defensive EPA per play, and I gotta be a believer in UCLA's defense, right? I mean, we talk about how hard it is to be on a negative defensive EPA per play,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not just that they're above the rest of the field; they're negative. That's really hard to do in college. So this could be the game where I really don't have a strong feeling either way, and mostly because I haven't watched these two teams play except for one game each. But you can go back here to the breakdown, the graph break, or the
Yeah.
table
Yep.
breakdown, excuse me.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're looking at this opening at 5, to me that seems like that's too many points for you to pass up, and I'm not surprised it moved the way it did.
For UCLA.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, and now sitting at 3.5, you still have the key number there. One thing I wanted to point out here on the matchup map using the power ratings, UCLA is tucked under Liberty and Ole Miss there. So this is a team that is definitely in the quadrant of good offense, good defense. And they're very, very, very close to Oregon, which is a little bit better on offense and defense technically. When you take into account blue chip ratio and all these other statistics. Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I mean, and you already heard my bias. Like I want to sell Oregon State here. I'm not a believer. And that's just frankly completely biased. I understand that. But yeah, and I don't know. I have my own UCLA kind of hate as well. But I may be riding blue, baby blue this weekend. I have to say, like,
Woo!
the 3.5, I think, is going to move to 2.5. I can't imagine that the market is not going to eat this up. Now, that being said, if the true number is 5, the model is going to see a little bit of value on Oregon State here at that number, especially if it moves to 2.5. So you'll have to weigh that. I don't know. I mean, we're going to talk about it here in just a second, but we're betting on so many games this weekend. To me, this is one where this is one where I'm completely using my heart, not my head, and I'm just like, nope. At one point, I'm going to be right. I'm going to be right. If I just keep saying Oregon State's bad, at 1 week they're going to get their butts kicked, and I'm going to be like, yep, see, I told you. That's how I feel about Oregon State, and I can't really figure out why. All right, so you really like UCLA here, plus 3.5.
Yeah, I think once you cross that key number, I gotta go lean the other way. But yeah, as of right now, I do like UCLA to cover.
Okay. All right. I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. All right. Let's get into the model plays because boy, oh boy, there are a lot of them. It's a combination of dogs, combination of favorites. There's some we've seen CLV for most of them. We've seen some negative CLV in a couple of these, and I want to point all these out. But let me get a couple of your favorites, Steve. Which ones jump out of you where you saw it, we're like, hell yeah, and then give me also some where you're like, what? That sucks.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this and we kind of teased this earlier. Georgia Vanderbilt, so you watch us, we always talk about in NFL where there's so much more even distribution of talent, right? We really don't like double digit spreads. And in college, we see these wild 28 plus point spreads, and the model tends to love the dogs in those scenarios of 4 touchdowns or more, just kind of what we've seen so far early on in this year. But here we are, Georgia as a favorite with that opening spread of minus 29, model putting that at minus 31. And this is right. I love this matchup, not just because Georgia's on one side of the elite offense, elite defense, and Vandy's on the complete other, but you also have this likely backup in Ken Seals playing again for Vanderbilt. This just screams blowout. I mean, this to me, I think the biggest sweat in this game is going to be Georgia benches its players in the late third quarter because they're up by 42-45. So I love this one, but I do have a little bit of a backdoor concern there, but not enough to deter me by any means. And then same thing with Ohio State. This is a team that's really finding their legs right now. Word is they may get Travion Henderson back in the backfield. He's been one of their elite running backs. So this, to me, again, you see this offense kind of turn up from that fourth quarter of Maryland. I expect them to roll. And I know this sounds very square of me, but I love the two heavy favorites. The ones that I'm a little about, I really don't watch most of these teams, to be completely honest with you. Nevada UNLV, that one scares me a little bit just from Nevada's standpoint. And then Sam Houston State, there's kind of running joke that I always bet on Sam Houston State because I bet on them one time. But we'll see what they can do here. I really don't know much about New Mexico State, so we'll see.
I got the game is on as we're recording this. It is Sam Houston State 0, New Mexico 14, and they're in the red zone, first and goal, about to score again. So, I mean, I'm just gonna say that game I obviously don't like as well. Shout out to Kevin. He said the same thing last week, and maybe we can turn it around at some point. Yeah, for me, I agree with the favorites. I like those favorites. I do, and I like those numbers. Now, the market hasn't fully agreed or disagreed with us here. It hasn't crossed the key number of 21 or 32 in either of those games, but it's flirting with those numbers. So it'll be really interesting to see where it closes, because I think that'll be really telling, especially Ohio State closing at 21 or 21 and a half. I think would be really nice to see. The ones I hate, and I hate them, Kent State. This has been an auto fade team for me. The value is just too high for me to ignore it, even though I think it's going to lose. Like I just, Kent State is a team that is just being blown out, and the only game they've won so far was against an FCS team that they went and bullied. And now it was Eastern Michigan, the bee's knees. No, not really, but I really fear that game. And then the other one is Illinois Maryland. This one makes me feel both nervous and so smart, because tell me that this isn't the lowest that you can buy Illinois. Illinois has not covered in any of their games. They have not won any games, I believe. Maybe they won their FCS team or one. I'm sure they won their FCS matchups, but when we're talking FBS, they're I believe they're only defeated and they have not covered. So this is as low as going to get, in my opinion. I mean, walk me off the ledge here, but I don't think anybody's running the counter from the public side to get their money down on Illinois. They've been kind of just beat up week after week.
Yeah, no, sorry, but you got to jump. I'm walking you back. You got to jump. I'm with you all the way. That's actually a damn good point.
Yeah, well, and the one thing here I think is very, 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 very key. And, shout out to the board members. 14.5. So important. So important. I don't think Illinois wins this game. I think Maryland can for sure, beat them up. But that 3 possession is basically what we're calling this game. At a 13.5, or even at a 14 as a push is not the same thing as the 14. And that is where I think most of this value gets derived. Is Illinois a 3 possession loss worse than Maryland? That's where I think, that's why I think where the value is there. Probably not on average. Now, do they get blown out in this game? I think it's very possible. I do. But I think that 14 hook is really, really key. And then what's the other one I don't like? Oh yeah, like you said, Nevada. It sucks. Why we're betting on the worst team in the nation. Again, though, at what point do things become oversold? Right? At what point does a market overreact? We're at week 7 of teams getting pounded week after week after week after week. Of course, an opening line isn't going to be inflated for Nevada. It's not going to be inflated for Illinois. It's probably going to be deflated to some degree. At least that would be my assessment here. So it's painful. It's not sexy, but sometimes this is what buying low looks like. It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable, right? It's uncomfortable. The other one, Michigan, at 34.5. That one is the one to me that gets backdoored, because Michigan's been, yes, they're blowing people out. They're playing with some pace, but like at some point, Michigan, Indiana, like I feel like pace is going to be important, and it's going to be 35-0, and we're going to get backdoored because of just no reason, meaningless field goal or something like this. I could very much see that playing out for that game. And then Pittsburgh, Louisville. That's another one. I guess I say all this. They all feel very uncomfortable this week. Most of them feel uncomfortable. Yeah, but that's why I use a model, right? It forces you to look at things more analytically, right? Because my brain would be like, oh yeah, let's like Louisville. What has Pittsburgh done this season? I don't really know. What have they done this season? But apparently they've done enough to find value at I believe we got that at 10. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So this ends up being 14 plays that we were able to get at least 2% just by shopping the market around. And yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. We'll see what ends up happening. We're coming off 9-0. Definitely not expecting to go 14-0 this week. But I'll totally take a 9-6, 9-6, or 9-5. 9-5 would be easy peasy. 17-0. Sam Houston State is losing.
Shout out backdoor.
Yeah, I don't know what did we get that at? What's it on here? We got that. I think it was a plus. I think we got a +7, if I'm not mistaken, because it wasn't at 5, because that wouldn't make it EV. It may have been 5 or 6, 5.5 or 6. But anyways, we'll see how this pans out. All right, Steve. That's all we got planned. Any other bets we didn't talk about that you're excited to bet this weekend?
No. I think the big one is going to be the Notre Dame SC game, which we already talked about. We got our hands full here with a full slate. Again, want to reiterate, we're not going to go 9-0. We're not going to go undefeated. Yeah. Temper your expectations. Probably going to be like a 13-1 week. So no, yeah.
I'll take it.
But yeah, no, I'm excited. No, anything from your end?
Anything from my end? I kind of want to dabble on the UNC game. I think I might. And then I want to figure out a way to get some action on that Washington-Oregon game without having to pick a side. So I think I'm going to get into the lab and figure something out that makes that a little bit fun to watch. But I forgot to say this when we broke that game down. This is a win-win situation as long as no one gets hurt. Why? as long as this is a pretty good matchup, like to me, this is what the Pac-12 tournament's going to look like. It's going to be these two teams. And if that happens, we're making money. So I'm just hoping for a clean, good kind of a good shootout. Like if it's like Texas, Oklahoma again, that would be perfect in my opinion, because I think we want to see that both these teams are really good, because that means to me that they're going to both dominate the Pac-12, and then we'll see these two teams again in the Pac-12 championship. All right, well, that's it for this week for our college football recap and week 7 preview. Remember, like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments, what are you betting this weekend? What are your locks of the week? What are your best bets? And let us know also if the tools are helping, or what tools would be helpful to you, because we're always, willing to get feedback. We went ahead and made the power rating, so we're always looking to kind of give you guys what you need to make yourselves better bettors and to improve your betting, because that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to use the information we have to be better bettors and make better bets and ultimately win money. So without anything else, Steve, I think we will go ahead and sign off. We'll see you all next week. Let's bully the board.